This is Spirit Gym. Today's episode dives headfirst into the profound and often misunderstood world of non-dual consciousness and unpacks some big questions. What if everything you've been taught about God is just smoke? What if you're not just a body or even a soul, but a timeless being caught in a cycle of misremembering? And is it even possible to live in a non-dual state in a world built entirely on duality? Paul's guest today is Vedic scholar, author and translator of Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive, Jeffrey Armstrong, a man who spent over 40 years deconstructing Western spiritual misconceptions and reviving the precision of ancient Sanskrit wisdom. This conversation is bold, unscripted, and at times radically challenging, especially if you've grown up with a monotheistic worldview. So if you've ever wondered why there are 45,000 versions of Christianity, why your beliefs might be holding back your healing, or what the word God really meant before it became God, stay tuned. You're about to hear perspectives that might just rewire your understanding of consciousness, language, and life itself. If you enjoy this episode, we invite you to explore the deeper levels of connection and conversation available in the Spirit Gym membership community. Go to myspiritgym.com for details. And finally, before diving in with Paul and Jeffrey, we'd like to say thank you for listening, as this podcast would not be possible without you, our subscribers and followers, and also our premier sponsors, Organifi, Bioptimizers, Paleo Valley, and Wild Pastures. You'll hear the special offers and discounts from the sponsors throughout this episode, or you can visit the show notes page at paulchek.com/podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. As you heard from Penny's beautiful introduction, we have Jeffrey Armstrong back with us today. We're going to talk about investigating non-dual consciousness. I really wanted to talk to Jeffrey about this because there's quite a lot of opinions out there on non-dual consciousness, what it is, how it functions, especially amongst, yogis and people that are meditators and a variety of other spiritual type people. And it's something that I've, of course, investigated quite a bit, but Jeffrey's very deep. If you listen to my first podcast with him, you'll know that. He is the translator of the Bhagavad Gita Comes Alive by Jeffrey Armstrong, one of my favorite books in my library, and a great, beautiful copy of it. I have it right on my desk. So, Jeffrey, it's great to have you back, and I'm looking forward to kind of diving into all this stuff. And one of my big questions is to see if it's even realistically possible to be in a non-dual state of consciousness in the context of our daily life. And if so, what are some of the hallmarks of living life from a non-dual state of consciousness? And I'd love to get into your opinion on what it takes to actually reach that state, if that's realistic. But before we get into all that, what have you been up to? It's been, God, I don't know how many years now since we did our first podcast. I think your book had recently come out, if I remember right. I know Jason spent a lot of time with you, and you've got your teaching groups and all the things that you're up to. So what's been going on for you since our last podcast?
Well, you used the just right word, by God, because what I saw was that the English language was used during colonization by the British in order to get rid of, and there was actually a law passed by the British that Sanskrit could not be taught in the schools in India.
Oh, wow. That's not very good.
That was to stop them from learning their root language, which the British knew enough to be afraid of. And in place of it, English would replace it, and therefore, over time, Western civilization would replace it. And that was their strategy for colonization. So I have spent the last decade increasingly decolonizing the language used to describe the Sanskrit Vedic library.
That's a great idea, because then you can get closer to the truth.
Absolutely. And you'll enjoy this because uh, of the herbal substances that you've just been applying, and that is that the word God actually comes from a German word, gutan,
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
a Dutch word, gut, and a Sanskrit word before that. When you place an offering into Agni, which is called an Agnihotra Yagya, or offering.
Fire, you mean?
What arises, yes, the fire is called Agni. Your offering is received by the fire, Agni. The smoke that arises is called hutam,
Hutam, I like it.
Hutam, which is
Nice.
the actual meaning of the word God. In English, it's blowing smoke.
I love it. Thank you. It was worth the whole podcast.
They're just blowing smoke. They
It's
don't
a.
really.
Is it Hutam?
Yeah, it's hutam. And hutam became gutam, became gut, became God. But the word God simply means the smoke arising from an offering made in an Agnihotra Yagya, saying thank you for dinner.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, of course, I understand that context of it, but I think if we look at it in a larger context,
That's right.
then I think we'll get into that later, but it does have lots of meanings. And I've had to investigate this deeply because sadly, the most common thing that is an obstruction to my patient's healing over my now 41-year career is beliefs about God and what God wants and what God will do to you if you don't do this or do that. And it leads people into a sort of a real struggle with themselves that leads to a lot of so-called sinning, which leads to a lot of guilt and shame and, everything that goes with that, which ends up relegated downstairs to the shadow, which then controls you from backstage. And then it becomes pushed out as projection. And then next thing you know, relationships are falling apart, bodies are falling apart.
I know. I studied psychology. Id, ego, superego,
Yeah.
Satan, fraudulent. I mean, Freud.
Yes. Well, I'm not really a fan of Freud much because I've studied him enough to know that there's a lot of problems there. But I think Jung did us all a great big favor and kind of breathed some life into what Freud, could carve out of his mostly copyings of his own teachers.
Yes, he helped us be young again.
Yes, he gave Jung a platform to self-realize, and then Jung stepped into his own, shoes, so to speak, as you know.
Yes, and my first degree was psychology.
Yeah, great.
Suke, logi, the logic of suke.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what language is that?
That's Greek.
Greek, yeah, because, psyche means butterfly, it means soul, it means breath, spirit, all sorts of stuff.
And this is where we're going to dance today. Amidst all of these words that many sincere persons have been using for the Sanskrit terms from India because they don't necessarily feel comfortable using a Sanskrit word with their friends. And what you're doing is an excellent example because the root of what you're doing is ritam, the ritam or the rules of nature according to Sanskrit.
Oh, yeah, good. Very good. And,
spirit is ritam. It's partial use of ritam, spirit.
Right. Very good. I like that.
So the spirit part is a Sanskrit word borrowed into English. Inspired is to be given back your spirit, which in Sanskrit is your jiva atma.
Right. Yeah.
Your atomic self.
Personal soul. Yeah.
Atmic self.
Yeah. Individual self.
Well, atome means you can't cut it.
Uh-huh.
The atom supposedly couldn't be cut.
Yes.
But then we did cut it.
Yeah. With a big bang.
And we got more than that. We got a whole lot of politicians that have itchy fingers.
Yes.
And so that shows us that we're playing with dynamite.
Yes. Yeah.
Linguistically. So we're going to try to sort through this. Many people are with the yoga movement, so we're not being disrespectful to anyone's teachers or group. we're going to show the nuances of language between Sanskrit and English.
Well, yeah, I think also the clarification is so important. It's kind of like when you're a kid learning to write, and all of a sudden someone points out that you've been using the two different forms of weather incorrectly, and you go, "Oh, I had no idea." Which, by the way, has taken me till recently to finally sort out. I'm not a guy that did very well in school,
Oh.
So, Jeffrey, it's my understanding that the Bhagavad Gita is the most read of the Hindu scriptures, which are older than the scriptures of monotheistic religions. If you could succinctly state what is offered in the Bhagavad Gita that isn't offered in the scriptures of monotheistic religions, what would it be?
In each of the other traditions, and I'm the first to say so, I have not only was I raised a Christian, so I've seen it close up, but I have a degree in history and comparative religion as well as psychology. So I took the effort of going not just to academics, but to real rabbis, to traditional persons from each of the religions, and learning enough from them to show them respect rather than just disregard them or dismiss them. Because after all, every single one of these persons is holding some kind of sacred viewpoint.
Yeah.
They too are trying to bring into English, but not always successfully. And
Yeah.
sometimes with those, let's make a distinction. The three Abrahamic life religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam only believe in one lifetime. So let's call them the one lifetime religions.
I think too, just if I could interject on there,
Yeah.
that has a lot to do with the editing of the Bible, and there's Nag Hammadi scriptures and others that speak of reincarnation, but they cut that out, which is another problem in Christianity, because most dogmatic Christians believe the Bible's never been edited. It's the inspired word of God, and the earth is 4,000 to 6,000 years old. So we have all those issues.
That's right.
But so my point is that it depends on whether you're studying the mystics of those religions or whether you're studying this sect or that sect. And just to show you how confused Christianity is, I recently did some research from my Writing in Spirit Gym book series. And I asked Google the question, how many branches of Christianity are there today? Do you have any idea what the answer is?
Oh, let's see, 2000.
Well, I was actually directed to a paper by a Center for Religious Studies. It was a Christian-oriented organization, so it came right from a Christian organization, and there are 45,000 branches of Christianity, each claiming to have the authentic teachings of Jesus. I appreciate you're saying they're one lifetime religions, but I think just to be fair to some that might disagree because they're in a different sect, it's very confused, and that's one of the problems with these issues today.
That's why I mentioned it, because we're not saying they're insincere. There are many very sincere persons who still are at a stage of learning that are learning some of the truths, and each of those Abrahamic religions has a certain amount of truth in it.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it's not to be disrespected by truth seekers, rather to be given a ratio or a number, or say, well, yeah, that one works well, that one's not quite as precise.
Yes.
Because again, we're using language in Sanskrit. Until you learn Sanskrit, you don't know what precise language is. That's the bottom line. Because there are 52 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet instead of 24. And Sanskritam means the language that's perfected. It has thousands of grammatical rules that are very precise. Right.
And so it's a very precise way to describe something, which if you want to be accurate, you need that level of precision, or you get all the kind of confusion that leads to 45,000 branches of a religion.
Yep.
And then, of course, we have the problem of people and their capacity, even in a culture that was Sanskrit, would range wildly in their own ability to apply those rules and understand them and use them.
So you and I have a common ground rule. And that is, while discussing this, do not be disrespectful to people for holding a unique perspective.
Well, I think everyone's, no matter how you get a bunch of monks in a room that have studied together for 20 years, they'll still have their own unique perspective because there's no two psyches that are the same. It's just not, God doesn't do anything twice. So if you could maybe share then, what is it that the Bhagavad Gita offers that isn't classically in the monotheistic religions?
Let's just think for a moment that it was a different time in history. According to Nilesh Oak, a scholar who's paid great attention to what is contained in the Sanskrit, and in particular, two books, the Mahabharata, which was written approximately 7,000 years ago, written down in Sanskrit, and then the Ramayana, the other epic story, both of a supposed descent of the Supreme Being to earth in a form that in Sanskrit is called Purna, or full avatar. The entire being of the Supreme Being came to earth twice in the country we call India, whose technical name is Bharat, 14,000 years ago and 7,000 years ago. The event 7,000 years ago was named Bhagavan Sri Krishna. That's the name of the aspect of the Supreme. According to the Vedas, the ultimate Supreme Being came to earth in the country we now call India, Bharat, and lived on the ground for a lengthy period of time and had conversations like the Bhagavad Gita, and arranged, because it's the Supreme Being, arranged historical events that would illuminate the human condition, and hence of interfamilial war in a royal family forms the plot for the Mahabharata. But meanwhile, who's on the ground? The Supreme Being, who can't fight on anybody's team because that team would just automatically win. No fair. Who becomes the chariot driver for the team he favors, which is Arjuna. And this is the context for the Bhagavad Gita. The two armies are facing each other, kind of like our world, except there's a bunch of armies, weapons, and so forth, but same idea. And in the midst of that, a sincere individual is taken out into the middle, doesn't want to kill. So there's two kinds of warriors, the ones that love to kill and the ones that only do so to protect the innocent.
If I remember right, there was family members on the opposite side of Arjuna, so he had to fight potentially kill his own family members.
What could be more painful? So he's crying, and finally they got right out in the middle of the field. He's the generalissimo on one of the sides, and here the Supreme Being is driving his chariot, 4 white horses, and an amazing chariot, and they're ready for conflict, and everybody's blowing horns and ready to kill each other. Talk about a family quarrel.
Yeah, sounds familiar. Sounds like COVID.
It does.
So if you could succinctly state then, what is the Bhagavad Gita offering that the other ones are not? Because so far what I've heard is war and God, but those are kind of classic themes throughout all religions.
That's correct. And in the Bhagavad Gita, everyone on the field knew that they were immortal and could not die.
We're immortal.
Immortal. So you cannot kill someone. You can only remove their body.
Right.
And this is the basis of the Vedic civilization. Jivera Svaruphaya Niter Krishna Das. All living entities are immortal beings in different bodies. And according to the Vedic texts, there are 8,400,000 species of life that each Atma, that's us, goes through in order to reach human, or particularly 8 million till human, and 400,000 different kinds of humans. And it's like a big university. And so the Vedic viewpoint is nobody can die. You can't. you can only leave the body you're in, just like this shirt will wear out. I'm pretty sure. If I commit suicide because the shirt wears out, I'll miss a lot of opportunity. So this is the premise of the Vedic civilization. No one can die.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the podcast. As a therapist that is constantly teaching people about nutrition and hydration, I've found that the only people that really understand and use electrolytes are endurance athletes. But what most people don't know about is the importance of electrolytes for general health, mineral nutrition, improved hydration, blood sugar and insulin regulation, enhanced vitality, and enhanced brain function. Though there is a rising awareness of electrolytes and many companies offering them, I can assure you that they are not all created equally, and what that usually comes down to is the quality and cleanliness of the source materials and how they are combined. Having tested many electrolyte products, I was honestly shocked when I experienced Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes. Why? Because I eat a super high quality diet and back it up with the world's highest quality whole food supplements to guarantee a full spectrum of nutrition, and I'm a lover of high quality salts, so I thought for sure I was getting enough electrolytes. When Paleo Valley sent me their essential electrolytes to test, I was honestly shocked at how much more energy I had. I even experienced an improved level of mental clarity that I didn't expect from an electrolyte drink of all things. Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes are available in orange, watermelon, and lemon lime flavors and is a whole food sourced electrolyte blend. Get the complete benefits of trace minerals and electrolytes found in unprocessed ancient sea salt, organic coconut water, and seaweed extract without the refined sugar and synthetic ingredients in most electrolyte drinks. Though Paleo Valley's essential electrolytes are good for children and adults, I feel this product may be one of the most important dietary additions for anyone age 50 and beyond, because the benefits that essential electrolytes offers addresses many of the problems common in aging people today. In fact, I've been adding them to my daily health and performance shakes since the day I first tried them and will continue to do so. To get your essential electrolytes and save 15% on your order, go to paleovalley.com/Chek15. That's PALEO valley.com/CHEK15. If we want to make the world a better place, we've all got to stay healthy and fit and support companies like Paleo Valley, because they're a perfect example of the kinds of companies we need more of in the world today. Enjoy essential electrolytes.
Well, hopefully as the shirt wears out, it gets more holy.
Ooh. And hopefully, holy is still useful.
Yeah.
Instead of just full of, holes.
Exactly. Now, I have a few things I want to get into just to preface where we're going. You said that all the people in the war battle in the theater were aware of their eternal existence.
What I said was they had forgotten that and just thought they were the body.
Okay, so that's okay. That's the distinction I missed.
Everybody's just mad and going to kill the other person's body.
Right.
It's interfamilial war.
Yeah.
And nobody's thinking you're an Atma. Nobody. And that's why Krishna is the chariot driver of Arjuna.
Mm-hmm.
And why one of the first things that Krishna says to Arjuna is, Arjuna, because you and I are best friends, I'm going to reveal myself to you.
Yeah, the reason I brought that up is because my first thought when I misunderstood what you were actually saying, I thought you were saying they were all aware, and that was the cultural difference, or the difference that the Bhagavad Gita or the Hindu scriptures gives us that the monotheistic religions don't, is that there's this underlying understanding of the immortality of the soul. But I didn't realize you were saying Krishna knew that, but the rest of them didn't, which kind of leaves us in the same situation as all the other religions we're talking about.
Or let's say it starts us at the beginning point of the real ignorance, which is of who we are. The Vedic perspective is the so-called religions of our world have not actually dealt with that question. Full stop, right there. None of them say, you can't die. You will keep getting bodies until you're ready to go back. Only the Veda says that.
Yeah, it's kind of pretty deep in Buddhism, but we're comparing it to the
In
monotheistic.
Buddhism, there's no you.
Right. Depends which branch of Buddhism. There's a lot of different opinions in Buddhism too, believe me.
Different viewpoints, for sure. But to be solid, it is the forgetfulness of who we really are that was being cured in the Bhagavad Gita. And this is where the story starts. Arjuna says, I don't want to kill all these people. And Krishna says, you know what? No one can die.
So here what I want to do is I want to ask you a couple of defining things to set the stage for this. When you personally use the word God in conversation, like in our podcast right now, what exactly does that word mean to Jeffrey Armstrong?
The only way that I use that word is to correct it.
Well, I know it means more to you than just smoke, I would suspect.
It's been used as smoke for something that the people using it didn't understand fully, but only partially. So it's the smoke word that's covering the partial understanding, often at the sincerity of the user. A person can be very sincere and say, oh God. But if you ask them precisely what their name means, they'll have a myriad of different answers. This is where the Sanskrit again comes in. The word God, as I pointed out, is blowing smoke. That means it doesn't have a meaning. There's no literal meaning except smoke to the word God.
But look, there's about 8 billion people on the planet. Every one of them has a different perspective. It's
That's
important
right.
for me to understand what you mean, because it's you that I'm talking to, and it's going to lead to another question, but I have to know what exactly you mean when you use the word.
I never use it. That's my
Okay.
point. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
Okay, so what was it then
Never
that...
use the word God because it's not a useful word, according to my understanding. It's a confused word used by people who don't have a useful word. So the term I would use instead of God is Bhagavan.
Okay, and you also used the word supreme being manifested twice. Once as Krishna, once as another being. What is the supreme being, and how does that correlate to what I might think of as God?
Well, we'll have to do this a little bit at a time, but the word in English, prime, comes from the Sanskrit prema, and it means ultimate, and it's used in contexts like ultimate love, prema bhakti, but it's a adjective of degree, suprema. The su means 1,000 times greater, and prema means love, taken to what level? And this is the question we're asking when we ask, who is the supreme being? If someone says to me, I believe in God, I say, all right, please give me your definition. So let me give you a substitute word. I say Bhagavan. Bhaga means the desirable qualities that anything can have, and there are 6 bhagas: beauty, wealth, strength, fame, knowledge, and detachment or disassociation. And van means one who possesses to an unlimited degree. It's where the word van comes from, for where you keep your stuff in your van.
Van. Well, you know, Osho used to be Sri Bhagavan Rajneesh.
So he said, but shouldn't have, because he never demonstrated the qualities of Bhagavan. So that was a mistake on his part.
I don't know if he named himself that or if someone else named him that. Do you know that one?
No, I'm not sure, but he bought into it. And that was one of the things he said that was not true. It doesn't mean everything he said was untruth.
No, I studied him quite a lot. I'm very hip to Osho. I
He
got
said-
800 pages of Osho studies.
That's right. He said many useful things and Vedic things.
Yeah. I was just curious because he used to call himself Sri Bhagavan Rajneesh, and now you're basically telling me he was saying, I am God.
He was. And he should have said, I am Sri Bhagavan Rajneesh Das.
Worker.
Das, or servant of that being whose name I'm borrowing.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we don't hold this against him too much, what he did was very noble, and he did his best.
He stirred the pot.
Yeah, that's right. And I appreciate it. I was there, and I listened and learned, but it led me forward to go more toward the source point.
Yeah, good.
And so that doesn't mean I disrespect him for not knowing everything.
No, I understand. That's totally.
That's unkind and disrespectful. There are many teachers that are sincere, and all of the Buddha Dharma and all of these many different cultures are very sincere individuals trying to do beneficial things. So we don't want to hurt their feelings or make them feel bad or say bad things about them, including the Abrahamics. As far as I'm concerned, I say, your devotion is so intense. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just going to share with you what God means when I use the term. I have 3 levels of God that I use in Spirit Gym to make sure people are clear. Little g, O-D, I define as any being with the power to change its environment. Capital G, little o, little d, I define as the highest power of any belief system. Capital G, capital O, capital D, I define as the only being that can create and sustain itself, that for which there is no other, prime source and the source and sum of all that is. So that way I can help make a clear distinction to help people understand why it is, for example, that the God of one religion has very different requirements, demands, and religious gods tend to war with each other. And the reason I make that distinction is because if it's the same God, it makes for a very confused God. But if it's the highest power of a belief system, then we can understand that it's has a lot to do with belief at war versus actual fact or God. That's the only way I could take the confusion out of those words because of the myriad of ways they're being used.
Let me suggest one thing, that
Sure.
If you had brought up the question of, does your God give you more than one lifetime? And if they say just one, then you say that's not a full definition. And I don't say there's no truth in it. I say that's not a full definition. But I'm saying, yeah, so tell me more.
First, I have to ask another question to make sure that what I'm about to share isn't going in the wrong direction. How do you define a myth, like mythology?
I call it a myth-understanding. And it's the nature of the human condition, so I'm not surprised by it, nor do I say it with disrespect for the individual, because they're a divine being who's trying to grasp and understand. So I congratulate. I say congratulations, but let's work on your vocabulary a little bit, because without you doing that, you're still using words that can't be precise enough to really serve your purpose. So I bring it down to what it should be down to, which is not disrespecting the person, but their lack of vocabulary.
I'm confused. Are you saying a myth means that someone has a lack of vocabulary?
Yes. I'm saying that them using it in that way is a lack of vocabulary because they're applying a word that has meaning to a situation where it's not relevant. They're misusing that word because they don't have the correct word. And
what is the correct word?
And this is, what are we trying to say is mythological? That Krishna was on our planet in person?
Well, I'm asking that because I want to understand whether or not you feel the scriptures are myths or are they literal facts?
Okay, so I did say at first what I thought, that they're the literal facts that are missing in the world.
Okay.
First and foremost, they're not metaphorical. Those dates are not made up. They're the actual dates in the text themselves in Sanskrit, which is the most precise language on our planet. So what I'm saying is that without a Sanskrit vocabulary, you can't adjust your thinking. And therefore, more words are necessary. Okay, and this is why the word Bhagavan is not a synonym with the word God, because they don't mean the same thing. And if I ask someone, tell me specifically what God means, they will not know that it comes from Hutam and that it's blowing smoke. They will be using it in a way particular to themselves that they have invented and injected into the word God.
Or misunderstood or been programmed with.
But it doesn't have an understanding that's correct in any English dictionary. Or what is that dictionary called? And this is the secret. It's called an etymological dictionary.
Right.
Which traces the word back to where it comes from. But even the etymological dictionaries in English only give partial answers to that trajectory of history that they're tracking. But some of them don't contain Sanskrit words in as much abundance.
Right, that's true.
That was my point for the listeners.
So what you just said about myth, though, makes me think that your interpretation of what mythology is not factual, and therefore your statement suggests to me that these scriptures are factual and therefore not myths. Am I hearing you correctly?
You are, but also those words were not used to describe what was going on. So, yes, they're literal in the sense of certain understandings, one of them being that the ultimate person, Sri Bhagavan, came to Matabhumi, the planet we live on. That's her Sanskrit name. Earth is just a made-up word from Artha in Sanskrit. Kama, Artha, Dharma, Moksha. Earth is from Artha, means digging in the dirt. But the real name in Sanskrit, the oldest name for the planet we live on, is Bhumi, from which we get humus and human. Mata Bhumi is a person.
Well, you want to know something funny?
Yeah.
My son's name is Mana Bhumi Chek.
Ah, that's great.
Okay, so I need to step back to step forward. I never got a definitive answer. Are you saying that if something's factual, such as historical record, such as the cycles of the yugas, etc., in the Hindu scriptures, that it is not a myth in your conception?
It's a vote for its being the result of some precise activity, since it's still measurable and provable. It's just like science. If it only happened once then, that's really not science. If it's still provable now with an equation and with an experiment, then it's a common experience then and now. So what I'm saying is that what many people have been calling mythology is a mistaken understanding. It was actually avatar. It was a purposeful descent of the supreme being that in English we call God, who came on person with friends, with entourage, lived on Matabhumi, our planet, for over 100 years, left behind a legacy of things like this, the Bhagavad Gita and other such texts, and that the basis of the yogic Vedic civilization is this view of history.
Now, you realize the parallel, because as I said earlier, countless Christians, even Christian scholars, say that the Bible is the inspired word of God. It's never been edited, and it has to be worshipped exactly as it is. So they're basically saying the same thing that you're saying, except from their own perspective.
No, they're saying it without any evidence of it, whereas I have evidence of it because both the Sanskrit and the book tell where the stars were and the planets when this took place. There is no book in the Abrahamic religions that discusses the stars at all.
Well, actually, I'm going to have to challenge you on that, because I have a very unique Bible in my library that I learned about studying Jordan Maxwell's work that shows that Christianity is actually a star religion, and it is loaded with talk of constellations, stars,
Sure.
cycles. So
I'm not saying it wasn't there at first. I'm saying it's not there in the final product. I don't disrespect them in that regard.
Yeah.
I don't disrespect them. I simply say they do not have a present understanding of this history.
Right. I'm doing these explorations with you because I want to access your knowledge, your understanding, and address some of the common challenges and misconceptions and everything that goes with it.
I think it's great what we're doing.
And I've spent years and years studying mythology. It's an important part of my therapy and my teaching and my life.
Yes.
And, the reason I was asking you the question is because there's multiple types of myth. And one of the premier scholars of myth, Marcia Eliade, makes it very, very clear that myths can be very literal and very factual. But there's also myths that are allegorical and are basically teaching poetically or allegorically.
Yep.
And there's also myths that contain both elements of them.
And then there are teachings that are not myths, but have been called that by people who did not study them under a proper guru and understand them accurately. They were put in a category that they don't belong in because they're literal events from history. They are not mythology. They are literal, precise, actual, physical events that took place in the culture called India. And that is not recognized internationally, not recognized by the Abrahamic religions, because it would shatter their worldview and show that they're focused on a very narrow, small period of history. They have truths. They have part of the puzzle, but they have completely missed the point of timeless living entities. And they do not see their congregations as timeless beings. They see them as one-shot lifetimes. Maybe you'll go to hell, maybe you won't. That's it. Do as you're told.
Well, purgatory is supposed to last forever, so you would be an eternal being if you went to purgatory.
Yeah.
How's that for a paradox?
You wouldn't be a happy one. And the question I would say is, okay, so if I'm so nasty, what did I do? And if I only had one life, where did I do it?
Well, what I say is if God is God, then why would God burn itself in hell? That makes for a very stupid God.
If I came from them, what am I, the progeny who went bad? But there's a lot of us.
Why would God kill all the dosses, the workers, the beings that are experiencing the truth of itself?
And more to the point, isn't the Supreme Being the ultimate artist? Is it the beauty that we love and see all around us the byproduct of this person? And why would it not be a person? And why would I not want to have a personal, loving, friendly relationship? And that is exactly what Krishna says to Arjun. He says, Arjun, because you and I are friends, I'm going to reveal my inconceivable self to you. I'm going to show you the side that's very hard to show humans. And that, in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, is called the Virata Purusha, or the person who inhabits the universe and causes it to exist and to function.
Now, how many supreme beings are there in Hindu philosophy or thought or religion?
It's not Hindu, it's Vedic.
Okay, well, even because the Vedas are considered part of Hindu scripture.
No, Hindu is a mispronunciation of Sindhu River and doesn't exist with any meaning. There is no meaning to the word Hindu.
Well, you've got about 30,000 theologians to correct.
I do, and it is my job, and I'm busy doing it. They have not studied Sanskrit and do not understand. They're not entirely illiterate, like I said about Christians and all the other religions. I don't say they're totally ignorant. I say you've misunderstood certain parts of this as a process. The part you've really not misunderstood is history. Itihasa, the word history in English, comes from the Sanskrit word itihasa, and that's the name of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the two books I mentioned, that are the record of the Supreme Being coming to Earth, living for over 100 years, leaving behind a legacy of knowledge, and then disappearing and leaving us the residue, which is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So to put it simply, those are the Bibles. We don't call them that. Those are itihasa. Those are as it happened 7,000 and 14,000 years ago.
First of all, you never answer my question. How many supreme beings are there?
We know that the Supreme Being is a singular, but how many manifestations have there been or could there be? By supreme, we mean an unlimited number, and therefore they need to have particular characteristics that are recognizable so that not anybody can say, I am the full Supreme Being. And therefore, each of those books I mentioned, and only those two, have a literal description of the Supreme Being.
Okay. If Krishna as a Supreme Being appears on Earth, and Krishna is essentially in what we would equate to God embodied as a man.
No, because you attributed only the qualities of the so-called God to the being called Krishna and didn't expand the definition to go beyond that. That the point of Krishna coming was to leave behind a specific document, the Gita being an example. So tell me that in any of the Abrahamic traditions books, there are 700 verses where the Supreme Person on earth speaks to humans.
Well, in Christianity, that would be Jesus, because he is the Son of God or the emissary of God. Then you've got Abraham, and it depends on how you slice these things up.
Jesus doesn't qualify. I'm talking about the Father he was pointing to.
All right, okay. So that's what they call God.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that that person came to earth in their understanding. This is the difference between the Vedic Sanskrit culture and the rest of the religious cultures of the world who have a one lifetime worldview.
Have you ever questioned what the core really is or how to train it properly? Or maybe you don't know what the core is. Don't worry if you don't. In the late 80s and through the 90s, when I was researching the core, there was no concept of the core. People then only knew how to train the abdominal muscles that they see in the mirror. Through extensive research and clinical testing and rehabilitation of injured workers and athletes, I developed the concept of the core. The core is the central axis of your body and includes everything that's left when you remove your arms and legs. I found core stability challenges to be at the root of almost every back, knee, hip, and shoulder injury I rehabilitated. In fact, most of the injuries I saw were chronic and often debilitating re-injuries. But once I got the core functioning optimally, long-term resolution was common. Sadly, even though scientific core conditioning was one of my first popular workshops to be filmed and turned into a correspondence course, and has now been studied by thousands of exercise and rehabilitation professionals worldwide, most core training out there today is still outdated, oversimplified, or flat out wrong. Walk into any gym or rehab center today and you're likely to still see people doing planks, crunches, or sit-ups, which often make core dysfunction and posture much worse. Though some people will develop a six-pack, they commonly have chronic back pain and are often nursing recurring knee and shoulder injuries. That's why the Chek Institute is set to release the new second edition of Scientific Core Conditioning. Led by head of faculty Matthew Walden, a highly skilled and experienced naturopath and osteopathic physician, the new edition of Scientific Core Conditioning will take you far beyond sit-ups, crunches, and planks. You'll learn why the core matters in everything from posture and athletic performance to back pain and injury prevention and rehabilitation. You'll explore actual case studies from real clients and a step-by-step framework that you can use immediately. The second edition of Scientific Core Conditioning teaches you how to apply this cutting-edge technology to a CrossFit athlete suffering from chronic injuries and over-exercising. Six-Pack Simon, whose focus is aesthetics and figuring out why he hasn't been able to get the results he wants. The musclehead suffering from core dysfunction and digestive challenges that are disrupting core function. A woman with postnatal pain, pelvic girdle dysfunction, and frustration because of her inability to exercise. Inside, you'll dive into key areas like assessments, training principles, holistic lifestyle integration, how the organ and gland system influence core function. You will also learn about the latest controversies that surround core training and how to navigate them with confidence. Whether you're a coach, therapist, or rehab professional of any type, this course gives you the tools to deliver better results backed by science and 25 plus years of Chek Institute wisdom. Core dysfunction and the chronic pain and dysfunction it causes is by far the most common challenge athletes, workers, and everyday people face. So mastering what we offer in the second edition of Scientific Core Conditioning is a fantastic way to expand your clientele and your income. If you're ready to upgrade your approach, visit chek.group/spirit to register your interest and get an exclusive discount when the new course is released. That's chek.group/spirit for release notification and a special discount.
So let me see if I can simplify this, as I'm trying to indicate that there's disrespect to the various religions of the world from the Vedic culture, because they see the sincerity behind all of those different traditions, and they respect it and admire it. But at the same time, it is their message, and it is the one that you and I have just been discussing in Sanskrit, that took place at a historical moment that can be measured in the book and tracked by the stars. So we have proof that 7,000 and 14,000 years ago, these events took place. And who came to Earth was the being that all of the other religions are calling God or Allah or Jehovah. It's all the same person. The difference is a lot more personal contact was directly happening when the full or Purna avatar of the supreme and ultimate being came to Earth. Mm-hmm. Twice in remembered history. That gave rise to two books, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, and that is the worldview of the culture of Bharat, of India. It does not deny that the other religions are trying to talk to the Supreme Being.
I'm curious if what I think of as God is the Supreme Being in correlate language and parallel, and it manifests in Krishna as a being, then doesn't that kind of give the impression that God is this supreme being, but everything else is something else, like the world and all the other people? What is everything else?
And this is the thing about the Vedas. All of that is discussed. And that is why there are sciences like Jyotish. And that is why every human being has many lifetimes inside them already, that the karma from which is acting out in this lifetime, and that they will have as many as they would need and wish to have to continue to have experiences here. There is no time limit set upon it, and there is no ultimate thing you must do. It's only until they again realize who they really are and desire to go back to where they're really from. That is the Vedic worldview. It existed before Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, still exists. And if somebody's teaching part of the Vedas without teaching all of it, that's fine. As long as they don't say this is the whole thing. If they do, I would correct them and say, not quite.
I'll try to state it a different way.
Yeah.
In my conception, God is the source and sum of everything. So to say that God manifested as a being, we would also have to say that God manifested as a being within its own creation called the universe, the galaxy, the solar system and the earth, and that's all just as much God, and so is everything else, because if God is God, in other words, the supreme being can't be separate from the rest of itself. But this
Yes,
story makes it.
That's the premise of an avatar. That's the definition.
So how does that happen? How does source separate itself from itself?
We're talking to us. That's the whole point.
Pardon me,
The
I
whole
missed
point of
that.
this is so that we can have a direct personal contact. And the person of the divine can come down in person and say, hi, I'm the person of the divine, here to visit you. And this is exactly what Krishna said to Arjuna. He says, my dear Arjuna, even though I'm the supreme and ultimate being, because you and I are friends, I'm going to reveal myself to you and show you who I really am. If you don't say it that way, you did not speak the Bhagavad Gita.
Very interesting.
There is no way to change that from what it is. The person of the Supreme came in person.
Right. Good. So here's my question then. Where did Arjuna come from? What is Arjuna composed of? What holds the atoms of his body together? And what is everything ultimately?
Sure. And the answers to that are given in various of the texts of the Veda. Part of it's in Ayurveda, part of it's in Jyotish. But in the core Veda, which is the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedanta Sutras of Veda Vyas, 440 sutras, and the 10 principal Upanishads, there are 3 texts that must be commented upon by a Sanskrit scholar, called then a Vedanta scholar, and they start a lineage of philosophical understanding of the Veda called a Sampradaya. And there are basically 5 different lineages in recent history. One of them is Shankaracharya, called Advaita Vedanta. One is called Ramanujacharya, called Vasistadvaita Vedanta. One is called Madhva Acharya, which is called Dvaita Vedanta. And the other one is called Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva by Chaitanya and his followers. And that is simultaneously one and distinctive. And these are the primary schools of ultimate understanding of the Vedic library. And you can see why it takes a little while to become literate in this, because it's a library.
Yeah, one of the problems, Jeffrey, is there's 2 kinds of literacy. There's a literacy that comes by being taught, reading, and studying, and there's the literacy that comes from direct experience. And I have plenty of direct experience myself of union with God and converse with God. And I have a soul, an Atman, and it says right in the Vedic scriptures, Atman is Brahman and Brahman is Atman. So back to the question is, who is Arjuna?
Actually, when it says Atman is Brahman, it means in nature. It doesn't mean it's not a person. And many people think that Brahman is just a white light. Well, not quite, but it is the ultimate energy from which the light of the sun is emanating from Brahman. But within Brahman is all of the beauty that we're seeing depicted or broadcast as the material world. The beauty that constitutes the material world is a broadcast from the realm of Brahman of the beauty that exists there forever, temporarily manifest inside of the matrix of the energy called Prakriti.
Right. And what is Atman?
And the Atma is the individual person who chose to go on this adventure and is inhabiting a physical body made out of the Prakriti, the inert unconscious energy here. So, wearing such a body, one is called a Jiva Atma.
But isn't that exactly what Krishna was when he incarnated to teach?
No, Krishna didn't incarnate. Krishna is an avatar, a descent, and not an incarnation.
So what was his body then? Because in the story, he's got a body. There's pictures of him all over the place.
That body was his original and purposeful, always existing self. He doesn't take a body when he appears. It's called an appearance, not an embodiment.
How's that different than you?
That I'm only a Jiva Atma, and the Supreme Being is the source of all that exists.
But that means you.
Yes, but I'm not possessed of all the powers of my source. Rather, I have characteristics of, which is the life force, which is my power over Prakriti, which is a myriad of other things. But if you say, am I capable of creating everything? The answer is no. Could I become a Brahma? The answer, according to the Vedas, is yes. In other words, a Jiva Atma like you or I could aspire to be the creator in a universe. And we could do that job just as if it's a job.
Sure.
Just
Evolution.
No, creation.
No, I'm saying to evolve to that level is evolution.
Well, no, because it's an achievement of that cognizance and consciousness, and it's an awarding of that role by Sri Bhagavan to the Jiva Atma who decides they would like to do that and becomes qualified. In other words, you or I, right now, are aspirants. We could work our way up to becoming a Brahma in some universe in our next life, if we want to be in that particular role and relationship with Sri Bhagavan.
Yeah, I think maybe you're not accepting what I'm saying. I'm simply saying if you evolve to the point that you go from the bottom of a corporation to being the CEO, or from the human state that we're in to being the controller and creator of a star or a universe, then you've evolved.
Yes, I didn't say that. I said we are evolving. That's the whole point of the Vedas, that we're Jiva Atmas, and that I said we could become a Brahma eventually. We cannot become a Krishna ever, because Krishna is not an invented being inside of matter. Krishna is the source of everything that includes matter. And that is the persona of Krishna as Sri Bhagavan. You cannot make another Sri Bhagavan, because Sri Bhagavan is the original being. Very much like the Abrahamic traditions would say, their deity is the ultimate source. The only difference is with the Vedic culture, there's a lot more specific information about the process of being an individual Atma, coming here to Prakriti, evolving up through the species. That whole picture or program is all based upon the theistic principle of Sri Bhagavan, also known as the most attractive being, or Sri Krishna. And that being lives outside of matter permanently and enters matter as Paramatma, sustaining it while there's a creation. So Vishnu is the extension of Krishna. But so is Brahma, and so is Shiva, but each for different functionality.
Right.
And all of this is described in the 18 Puranas, which accompany the Mahabharata and Ramayana as explanatory manuals for us understanding how it is that we keep on rebirthing until we're ready for moksha, to go back to the realm of Brahman, not to merge with Brahman, but to have a relationship with Bhagavan. That then doesn't take us to the ultimate status. And that ultimate status is what is described in the Bhagavad Purana and other such literature, and was acted out by the avatars of both Ram and then ultimately Sri Krishna historically.
So you can see from this conversation alone why very few people can understand this, and how it takes a tremendous depth of knowledge and study and practice and education to really even begin to wrap your head around what's being conveyed in the Hindu scriptures, be it the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, the Upanishads, any of them. And the point I'm driving at here is that this can lead to almost like a legalistic hair splitting all the way down the line, when really, if we focus on love and giving and loving the best we can and opening ourselves to direct experience of unity, then we don't really need all this hair splitting, because we already know the truth inside of us.
Well, if you're not sure what your evolutionary process is, you can't be a judge of the Shastra. But you can say it's too much for me, and nobody in the Vedic culture would tell you, but you must do it, or point a gun at you. They would say, that's all right, it's up to you, and have a nice day. So that's the difference. This is not imposed upon anyone. It's simply there for anyone who becomes ready. And I'm a good example of someone who's ready and keeps reading and keeps expanding my knowing of this, and have been doing so steadily for the last 40 years or so. It doesn't make me special. It makes me of that nature.
What's the highest state of experience you've had that's an actual experience, not a memory of study?
The immanence is a good word to understand. At first, we think that the source of everything is at a distance. But what if...
I don't.
You may not, but I didn't say what you were doing. I think of you as exceptional. That's why we're talking.
Well, when you say we, it sounded like you meant humanity.
I didn't say we, and I am talking about humanity.
Okay, well, I was half right.
We all start out in ignorance. Each lifetime, we start out in ignorance again, but not with a different capability underneath that ignorance. This is the principle of rebirthing. That life after life after life, it's just like a university. That's what I call it, the university. So we're here in the university. There's no particular grade you have to be in at any given time. You get to choose.
Well, I need to come back to my question. What's the experience you've had in the deepest state of your own spiritual practice or experience that you've had, and how would you describe that in a way that anyone else could kind of wrap their head around what it was?
Well, actually, you said it quite beautifully when you used the word God. I just would say that I have had a direct experience of the person who is behind all of this. And there are a variety of names and mantras and experiences that are associated with that. But essentially, I am convinced that I have had that contact, and therefore, that is all I want. The rest is detail. So I want to have that direct contact someday. But meanwhile, since I'm here, I then want to talk about it, live it, be a part of it as much as I can, and share it as long as the person is willing.
What does the term neti neti mean when it's used by a guru or someone that's truly enlightened?
If you asked me a philosophical question and said, tell me what you are, then I would say, well, I'm not this, and I'm not this. And then if you said, please tell me then what you are, then I would say, I'm a Jiva Atma. I am an individual who cannot die, nor was I ever created. I'm an immortal being who has come from the realm of Brahman and is visiting the realm of Prakriti. I'm just visiting here. I know why I'm visiting here. At least I'm of the opinion that I know why. And it's in the Shastra. It agrees with the viewpoints given in the Vedic texts. You would say, then who are you really? I'd say, well, I'm a Jiva Atma, like yourself. I'm looking at you, the real you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to be in the service of Sri Bhagavan because there's nothing else I want from here.
Right. There's a very good book you may or may not be familiar with. It's called Streams of Wisdom by Dustin DePerna, who spent many years studying with Ken Wilber. And it's kind of like a thesis, but it's a study of the stages of conscious evolution, which is kind of what we're going to get into next here. But he makes a very important point. He says no Christian having an enlightenment experience ever sees the Buddha. And what the research shows, and there's plenty of it, is that whatever our belief system is, even in experiences of union with God or whatever that person thinks is their highest power, they always have some experience that's contained within their belief that they carry in this lifetime. So, for example, your description of your highest experience is in accord with your belief based on your teachings and your practice.
No, I stop you there. It has nothing to do with my belief. I had the experience first because of associating with someone who could give me the experience. It was not a part of my belief system prior to that in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. I knew nothing of it, couldn't have described it, and didn't adhere to it, and was not having it. It happened in the presence of my guru and gurus eventually, because I've had more than one, and in their association, which is associating with this knowledge through the vibrations of the Sanskrit language and mantras, I've had a direct experience, which is what I continue to have, and it is not a belief, it's a practice.
The other issue, though, is because clearly reincarnation is part of this belief that you have, or this practice, or this this way of relating. So it's very likely that you have had past lifetimes in the Hindu culture, and therefore that's in your psyche.
Oh, of course. I believe I said that earlier, but yes, of course.
I think the point I'm trying to bring up here is that, you know, there are potentially millions of people that have had union experiences with God. If you study near-death experiences, for which there's countless of them, there's a lot of similarities between union experiences, whether they come by religion or by psychedelics or by death or when near death, and the parallels are striking. And so, but you study near-death experiences and you see very different descriptions. Some say I had a past life review. Some say there was no past life review. But ultimately, the common denominator is the experience of unconditional love.
Well, that's nice. But that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, because those are things that happened to them. This didn't happen to me. I sought this out. This is something that I have learned in a formal context, pursued, and continue to do so. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I'm a student of it. It's not an accidental event.
Well, I'm not suggesting that it's accidental. What I'm trying to point out is that in order for us to perceive anything, we have to have a perceptual framework, which is what language is, which is what experience is, which is what education is. But when people get deep enough into what we might refer to here as God or source, most of them say the experience is ineffable. They can only describe it, but the most common thing is it was the experience of unconditional love, by which there is no conditions. So you can't use a condition to describe no conditions. So what I'm really trying to drive at is that all of this gets so deep and so conflicted and confusing for people that I think if we boil it down to its essence, it's really the basis of love, loving, and...
That's an illiterate response. And that erases the Sanskrit. But the Sanskrit is the language by which we continue to be articulate. We don't throw it away because we think we've got there. And so that's the difference. The difference is the Sanskrit becomes more precious to us, and we deepen that connection, and we deepen our personhood and our individuality, and we don't throw it away or merge with something or go into emptiness or merge with oneness, because all of that is a boring alternative to beauty. And so we just say, thank you, I got that state, but it didn't answer the question. What's the question? Where is beauty coming from, and how do I interact with it?
That's ultimately what I'm saying is unconditional love.
No, I didn't say love, because
no, I said it, Jeffrey. I said it.
But beauty and love are two different things. That's what I'm trying to express.
Well, I'm trying to get to the root from which all archetypal expressions emerge.
Which is the beauty.
Well, good, beauty, and truth. If the unconditional love is the foundation, then the good, beauty, and truth are secondary.
Well, this is the difference in methodology between yoga and religion.
There you go. You see, that's my point. We have differences in perception and framework. That's exactly my point.
Which I'm not disagreeing with. I'm simply expressing the one you inquired from me, which is that the Vedic doesn't agree with that, but doesn't disrespect it. It simply says, well, if it's working for you and you're not hurting others, keep going.
I think that's the essence of the intention of it all, isn't it?
Well, not the intention, but it is certainly the methodology to show that you're not trying to do this as a form of extortion or coercion or trying to be hurtful or harmful. And so therefore, you would never try to force your worldview upon another human being. This just doesn't happen in this between you or I. There are just different ways of going about doing this and living these realizations.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I imagine you know that magnesium is one of the minerals that people in North America are the most deficient in, but it's an extremely important mineral to have in your diet regularly. And believe it or not, Bioptimizers has improved what was already well known to be the best magnesium formula out there called Magnesium Breakthrough. So I've got Wade Lightheart with me to explain what it is they've done to improve this already excellent formula. Wade, what is new about your new Mag Breakthrough formula?
Well, it's called sucrosomial magnesium. So we have 7 different types of magnesium in Magnesium Breakthrough because they're uptaken by different parts of the body. But a new type of magnesium has been created called sucrosomial. And what it shows in the research in science is that it's actually even more absorbable by the body, particularly inside of the brain, which is a big aspect to enhance neurotransmitter formation, as well as ensuring the rest and relax response in the nervous system that a lot of people will take magnesium for. They find it, clocks them down, helps them sleep better, allows for the relaxation of striated and smooth muscle tissue in the body, which creates an energetic relief. And so when we added sucrosomial, we were able to demonstrate inside our lab facility that we were able to get better improvements. Of course, we have a partnership with the Birch International University. We have some patents we're working on, which will kind of relay some of these things. But sucrosomial was a no-brainer when we added to the formula, improved the results or improved the uptake. And the reports back from our testing team were like, wow, we get more results with less caps. And that's always the goal for our company.
That's excellent. I love it. I always say, and people have probably heard me say it before, I'm so amazed how you guys are constantly and always improving and working your best to not only make better products for us, but it doesn't seem to me that it gets more expensive as you make them better. So that's a real gift to the world. Thank you.
And now Bioptimizer's Magnesium Breakthrough is available in a delicious flavored drink powder. It's packed with all 8 forms of magnesium, sweetened with Katem fruit extract that is 3,000 times sweeter than sucrose but does not spike glucose when metabolized, and made with organic flavors and colors. Choose from fruit punch flavor, raspberry lemonade, banana mango, or add your own choice to the unflavored options. To try Magnesium Breakthrough drink, go to bioptimizers.com/living4D and use the promo code Paul10 for 10% off your first order. That's bioptimizers.com/living, the number 4, the letter D, and the promo code is Paul10.
I think my point can be summarized this way. The number one cause of war historically is differences in religious viewpoints. And so here we see that if the religion is trying to force an opinion or defend an opinion, as opposed to acknowledging that the ultimate underlying purpose of all of these paths to self-realization is to love more and to realize that we are all expressions of the same being, then they're kind of losing the plot. And there's plenty of wars in Hinduism and in even all of those, every country in the world and every religion in the world, and even within their own religion. So as much as I appreciate everything you're saying, and I do, and I think it's great, I think that what I'm trying to get at is that very few people are going to study Sanskrit for 25 years and memorize all those rules. And in the meantime, if we focus on living and loving as much as we can and trying not to beat the shit out of each other will probably be better than if we are walking around confused about scripture and arguing and fighting over it.
That's right, which is why discussing it is the only way we who are practitioners of the Vedas will do it. We don't argue, we don't fight, and we don't superimpose, and we don't send it out at gunpoint. So there's no disagreement on that.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody wants to hear, they ask me. If they say, I've had enough, I say, okay, lovely to talk with you. Have a lovely day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to force it on them. I don't have a plot to force it upon the world. So in that sense, then, anyone who's teaching with unconditional love, who is not doing so by coercion or force, and who is trying to adapt themselves to the needs of the person they're teaching rather than force something upon them, then I think they're on the right track. Soon as we try to do any of those other things that you mentioned, obviously we're off the track. And so what I would boil this down to, the size of your worldview. The Mahatma worldview simply says what I have said about the Vedas. Yes, it's that big. Your own private experiences within it will, of course, be very personal and very intimate and very direct between yourself and one of the selves that you've chosen to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be many different gradients of advancement in different practitioners, all different yogis, all different persons. Some will say it differently, live it differently. And then we get to the devas and devis who are running the universe, and they're all partial manifestations of the ultimate reality, but only partial. And then the question becomes, then at what times in history is there evidence of the supreme and ultimate person coming to earth? And then each of the traditions will speak up. Judaism and Islam and Christianity will each have a different story about those momentary appearances. And the Bhagavad Gita is the rather succinct explanation of how those appearances happen with the supreme person, Sri Krishna, otherwise known as Bhagavan, appearing on earth and speaking it. And that's the only piece that you either accept or you don't.
I think I like them all. I like looking at all of them because the more perspectives I have, the broader the vision I have, which is why I've studied
I have
world
a
religion.
degree in comparative religion
Yeah.
and psychology, so I've studied mental institutions, which is the general world, and crazy places, which is places of fanatic understanding of these subjects that you and I are talking about. And then I've talked to reasonable, loving people like yourself. And
I
those
find
are
it all fascinating myself.
Me
That's
too.
why I'm having this dialogue with you.
vice versa.
I'd
sure.
like to kind of shift gears into this issue of non-dualism. As a religious disposition or philosophy, what is non-dualism or non-duality, and how does it differ from duality or duality-based philosophies as far as you're concerned?
The Vedic way of talking about this is, first of all, each of us is an individual, and we did invite the experience that we're having. We asked to go on this adventure as an individual. That is the premise of the Vedic civilization. Now, having said that, there are different places that we could end up. And of course, the obvious choices inside of a universe are many. But we could also, on our way out, talk about what we're not.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easier to say what you're not than who you are. If you say, of the things that you're associated with right now, show me what you're not. And I would say, well, this, and this, and these, and this. So what I'm not is the obvious. Now, you could stop there. And if you just got in a closet and it was quiet and no dark, no hurt, no nothing, no pain, no violence, peaceful, you'd have a lovely experience. Think of that as nirvana, quiet negation of everything.
Yeah.
So the next would be, what if everything is coming out of the shining, beautiful, bright light? Well, that's a lovely image. I like that. Another mantra I chant every day is the 108 names of the sun, Surya, because it is reminding me that it is to be like that light, which brings joy to everyone. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy. It's universal.
Yeah.
So if I can be like sunshine, wouldn't that be beautiful? So I go for my 1 hour walk and I chat a little bit with Surya. And then I say, I would like to learn how to be the best person that I can possibly be in all circumstances. So, O person of the divine, O Bhagavan, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, please let me be like you. And by like you, I mean, I love you so I want to have the positive qualities that I know you possess. Please let them rub off on me. And that's Arjuna with the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, because you're my friend, I'm going to show you myself. So the friendly mood of being shown how to be a caring and loving person is what results from associating with Sri Bhagavan.
So if I heard you right, and I probably didn't based on the last hour and 29 minutes, you talked about the closet analogy and going into a state of deep quiet or negation. And was I correct? You're saying that is the non-dual state?
Well, it's a step forward, and as part of it, in those two cases, your active self is diminished because not believed as much. Whereas in the concept of yoga that's called bhakti, bhakti continues your personhood and your action as a person, but no longer defines your personhood as matter or just as light within matter, or removes your individuality to remove the problem, which some practitioners of both emptiness and light do. But that those are considered intermediate stages of progress. Personhood isn't the problem, it's the misuse of it. When you misuse it, it becomes a problem. Otherwise, it's the most beautiful. So beauty is also redeemed. And that's basically the choices. And one who's really aware of this in the Vedic culture never tries to tell anyone what to do. They simply say, here's the choices as we understand them in the Vedic culture. You can go to Brahman, you can go to Nirvan, you can go to Bhagavan, etc. And they're presented in that soft tone of voice with no fanaticism. And then the person chooses, and then they talk to someone who knows more of how to be that way, that particular way. That's their yoga, you might.
Now, with typical states of consciousness that we're all familiar with, we have the waking state, the dreaming state, and deep sleep state. There's many models of consciousness out there that have parallels, some differences, it's just how they slice it. A basic model of structure stages shared by Ken Wilber is gross, subtle, causal, non-dual. So gross would be akin to the waking, and non-dual would be the highest state. What states of consciousness are in the model you use, and how does that relate? How can we juxtapose the non-dual versus the dual or the other states in your model?
I delineated the emptiness state, the oneness state, and the state which has distinctive forms and individuality. And those are the three possible states one can end up in.
Okay.
You can end up empty, purposely, in a dark closet with nothing. It's called nirvana. End up in the bright light, and it's only light. It's gorgeous. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. But you're just there, that's it. There's no more beauty, just light. That's also a beautiful, ecstatic place to be. It's just not quite beautiful. So what if the beauty tells another story? And that's what I'm suggesting. Or rather, I'm repeating that suggestion of the Vedic culture, that bhakti is based on the fact that beauty is not the problem. It's attachment to material chunks that look beautiful. So therefore, if you go back to the beauty, that's the ultimate state of being. I believe that's the case. I practice as if it was the case, but I don't try to force it upon anyone. And I don't say you're wrong if you go to nirvana, or you're wrong if you go to the light.
I don't think anyone's suggesting that you do or
No,
I'm just trying to
saying-
make some clarifications.
Yeah.
Simply, I think I need to explain to you why I'm asking you these questions, because there's many teachers, especially in the, what we would call yoga, which, of course, that's a broad thing, just like Christianity these days.
That's right.
That claim to be in a non-dual state, even while they're talking to people.
And I'm saying that non-duality is not the goal.
No, I'm not. That's not the question, Jeffrey.
But why would they say they're in the non-dual state then?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get clear. They're trying to suggest to other people that they're so enlightened that they live in a non-dual state and that they are communicating in a non-dual state. Yeah. And I have a hard time with that, because to perceive that you're talking to someone or even know what you're talking about, you have to be in a state of subject-object duality, or you couldn't have the conversation or separate yourself to even know you were talking.
But Paul, that's just what I said to you just now.
I'm asking you simply, is it possible to be in a non-dual state and have a conversation?
Is Krishna a non-dual or a person?
Well, I'm going to have to refer to you to answer that.
No. Is Krishna a person or a non-dual?
Well, if Krishna was non-dual, there would be no way to tell a story about him.
There you go. So that's what I just said. And yet at the same time, if you're stuck in the goo of matter, then getting out is step one, getting unstuck. But it's not the full answer, is it? All right. Then if light is driving the whole show, then maybe I just need to merge with the light, and that'll solve it. No, doesn't answer all the questions. Okay, then maybe all the beauty is temporary, and that's my problem. Now you got it. Mm-hmm. The beauty here is temporary. You can't hold on to it. You can't stay in it. Do you like it? Yeah. Do you still want it? Yeah. Is that a problem, or is it okay? It's fine. It's actually intelligent, because beauty is where we come from. Beauty is where this comes from. Beauty is the ultimate reality, and the person who is the ultimate beautiful person is known in Sanskrit as Bhagavan. And Bhagavan is the ultimate person that you could possibly know. If you want, you can associate with that person through their mantra. And by doing so, you say, yes, I'm not this gooey matter. Yes, I don't want to just go into the dark. Yes, merging with the light doesn't satisfy fully. What I want, my beloved, is your personal company. I've heard it's even possible to dance with you. Frankly, I want to go to the dance. And that is the ultimate state of bhakti. I want to go to the dance and dance with you, oh beloved. Dance with Sri Bhagavan.
In your translation of the Bhagavad Gita in verse 287, Krishna states, Arjuna, O Arjuna, there is nothing greater than me or beyond me. All that exists is held in place by me, just like the jewels strung on a necklace are held together by invisible threads. Krishna then goes on to state, I am the, and there's about 15 lines of verse that covers pretty much everything in existence.
Right.
Then in verse 342, we read, the entire Jagat, material universe, is pervaded by my invisible Jutri, non-material transcendent form. All beings are standing within me, but I am not contained or encompassed within them. Then in verse 343, it says, this is the immense power of my yoga created by my Atma, true or eternal self. Sometimes I'm putting these explanations in there from the glossary, or so people can know what, if they don't know what Atma means. So I'm not meaning to add to your book. I'm just trying to make it clear for people.
Just a footnote. If Krishna says my Atma, he doesn't mean like ours.
Okay, that's fine. When Krishna says in verse 342, all beings are standing within me, but I am not contained or encompassed within them, we face a paradox. all beings are within what I'm calling God, which you're calling the supreme being or source. I call source.
No, I'm calling it Bhagavan.
But we're using these terms as correlates.
I'm not
Okay, so
using any other term as a synonym except Bhagavan. That's what I keep saying.
yes, okay, maybe
There's
it's
no
just
English word that is the correct word.
okay. Is there anything beyond Krishna then?
No,
Okay, then you're saying exactly what I'm saying.
no, because you're using the wrong word.
No, I'm using the word that works in my own language, in my own relationship with the
No,
same
because your
thing.
language doesn't have the definitions for that word that are necessary.
Okay, so how do we find a correlate for your concept of Krishna and what I would call what would I would want to use in my own understanding to try to parallel your Krishna? What word would I use?
Not just one. But that's the whole point of the English language has been very illiterate in this regard because the Abrahamic religions have not wanted additional information. They've been trying to shut it out. It's very simple.
Well, what's the
They're saying
ultimate word in Sanskrit?
there is no single ultimate word, but as I said earlier, if there is one, it's Bhagavan. It's that person who has everything that you could desire, who is the source of and is the possessor of everything you could desire. Because therefore, if there's any object that you desire and you pursue it, you would end up at Bhagavan. Would you like to meet that person or no? Any human being who's halfway intelligent would say, yes, please.
Is Bhagavan that for which there is no other?
It's not a negative, but obviously it is. Saying that is saying it positively.
Is Bhagavan the only being that can create and sustain itself?
No, because in the context of Bhagavan, Bhagavan has empowered others to do so. That's why I didn't say that was the definition. But what we are saying is anything you could consider desirable and everything that is useful and is sustaining reality is the Bhaga that is possessed by the being known as Bhagavan. And it's a person, it's not an energy. It's Sri Bhagavan. In fact, it's persons.
What creates it?
Nothing. You're back at the source. That's the whole point.
Okay, so it is the being that creates and sustains itself.
Not only itself, doesn't have to sustain itself, it sustains and creates and inspires and is the source of and is reflected in all of the things that we see around us.
Wouldn't that be like its body then?
Nope, because that's too much like us. But there are different metaphors you could use if you used 100 or 200 of them, because that's fine, because then at least you're covering all the angles. That's why it's called Achintya, Beda, Abeda, Tattva. Inconceivably, simultaneously, distinctive and yet connected to everything. And this is why it's Achintya. Not a thinkable thought because we're too small to encompass it, but we can hold parts of it. And that's what leads to all the quarrelsomeness between people who know part of it. And that's why those of us who are devoted to Bhagavan try our best not to be in any way dogmatic, because we're not telling people what to do. We're giving them Bhagavan's description of how to do it.
How is Krishna different than Bhagavan?
They're the same person with different names.
Okay, so when Krishna says in verse 342, all beings are standing within me, but I am not contained or encompassed within them.
Yeah.
What is holding the beings together? What is giving them life and consciousness?
It's obvious, of course, that that's all being done by the devas and devis, if you've been listening earlier in the book.
Well, I have, but there also have to be expressions of.
No, they don't have to be anything.
So where do they come from?
From Bhagavan.
That's my point.
But what is the point?
Well, I'm saying, how is it that what I call God, which is the closest I can get in parallel to your Bhagavan or Krishna as the ultimate being, if any being is here, it had to have come from that source, and it must be something has to hold the atoms together and make it all dance. So my question is, how could Bhagavan or Krishna be saying, I am not contained or encompassed within them? What would be holding them together? Where would all these beings of creation come from? That would make there must be two gods then.
No, that would be if a person like you or I encompassed everything that Bhagavan does, then we would claim to be Bhagavan. And that's the point. We're not Bhagavan.
Well, we're trying to understand it, aren't we?
But understand doesn't mean become.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question.
How
Jeffrey, did you become? How did you become?
I'm not Jeffrey.
How did what's talking to me become?
Didn't become. It always has been.
What's holding it together so that it can have this dialogue?
Laws of matter. But that's not holding me together. That's holding the vehicle together.
What's holding the laws of matter together?
And this is, you have to read the Vedas, but the Devas and Devis, and Brahma the creator, and Shiva and Durga, and Vishnu and Lakshmi, and all of the other administrative individual beings who are running the entire cosmos are right now working so we can have this conversation, just as are the people conducting the technology and all of those other things. They're the Devas and Devis in the background. They're not the source of it, but it wouldn't be happening without their seva, without their service. But the source of it is elsewhere.
When you say the source of it is elsewhere, where is elsewhere?
Elsewhere is somewhere in Brahman where all of this has emanated. It's no longer able to be spoken of in the terms that matter is, because it's not matter. So therefore, we don't really have scientific terminology within the material energy to discuss what goes on in the existence of reality within Brahman.
Would it be consciousness?
The distinction that the Veda makes between Prakriti and Brahman is consciousness. But that's not enough to explain what you're asking about. So think of it as the potential for beauty, because it includes the concept that we talk of here as free will. But here free will is exercised in the context of matter, Prakriti. When the ultimate state, individuality, is not expressed in a context of unconscious energy. That's the difference between Prakriti and Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha is the technical Sanskrit term for the 3/4 of existence that is non-material. And it is achintya. It's not conceivable by those of us who are used to the structures within Prakriti. It's achintya.
What is the source of things that are not beautiful? Like?
Well, obviously here, anyway, beauty is again, an English word that's difficult to completely bear down upon because it's not a Sanskrit term.
What would the correlate be in Sanskrit?
Yeah, I'm not sure for beauty. I'd have to think about that. The thing to understand is the source point. If you say, well, what is the source point of, and point to anything, then here you can follow it back, trace it back to its construction. Beyond that, you say, well, where did that come from? Where did the idea to make that come from? So think of that as the realm of Brahman is emanating the realm of Prakriti. And therefore, what exists within Brahman is sort of being broadcast, you could say, into the temporary states of Prakriti. But where it's from originally isn't necessarily demonstrated by watching it inside of Prakriti. Well, we can see we're attracted. The word Krishna means the most attractive being. So basically, everything here is run by attraction, by attraction. And that original attractive being is the definition of the source of everything. We can have that person within us, but it doesn't make us unlimitedly attractive. But we are a part of that being because that being is unlimitedly attractive. Yeah, and that's a chincha. You can't think that thought easily within matter.
Using the concept of the broadcast, so if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that, the universe or creation is what's in the broadcast. That's what's manifest in the broadcast?
It's the part that we're experiencing now is an emanation from another place where it appears differently than it does here, or at least its substance exists there in a different way than it does here. This is the place where image of. Then somewhere in a factory, there's the original one. So in a similar way, everything that we see here is somehow a projected image of an original that is not contained within the reflection here. The reflection is its surface, not its essence.
It's parallel kind of to Plotinus's philosophy of archetypes,
which was taken from the previous
Plato
Vedic culture. Which
probably.
Not probably even. There's no question about it. They were along the Silk Road for thousands of years, and before they even came forward with their ideas. But yeah, the Platonic ideals, but those are inert, and these are not. These are active, conscious, and they're persons. But each of those philosophers took pieces of this and made it their own. Absolutely.
I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. I sure am. By now, most everyone has heard of the healing power and wide variety of nutritional benefits we gain when taking Shilajit minerals. As good as it is, it doesn't taste good at all. Imagine eating rotting rocks that have passed the due date. You're probably about right. But there is an exceptional way I get my daily doses of Shilajit that tastes fantastic. That's Organifi's Shilajit gummies. The texture and consistency of the gummies is excellent, and they have just enough natural sweetness to make me feel like I'm getting a lovely, healthy treat that both my body and mind can enjoy. The only problem with Organifi's Shilajit gummies is that you have to hide them when friends are around, and the kids too, or you'll go through 2 bags in no time. Shilajit is a unique mineral paste from the Himalayan mountains. It contains an abundance of trace minerals, antioxidants, organic acids, and nutrient-transporting compounds. It has been known throughout history to boost vitality and strength. Just pop a couple of gummies in and chew or suck them slowly for a steady release of the delicious, earthly, but slightly sweet natural flavor. Your taste buds will enjoy the delicious treat while your body soaks up massive amounts of feel-good nutrition. Rich with fulvic acid, humic acid, vitamins, enzymes, bioflavonoids, antioxidants, metabolites, and over 40 trace minerals, Shilajit gummies can help support energy production, support performance and recovery, support healthy muscles, promote collagen synthesis, promote healthy hormone levels, increase cellular energy, decrease fatigue, promote health. I absolutely love Organifi's Shilajit gummies, and I love knowing that there's something sweet that I can eat that doesn't come with all the challenges most sweet stuff does. If you'd enjoy something tasty that enhances nutrient variety, delivers the minerals your body needs, and helps you look and feel great, don't wait. Get your Shilajit gummies now. Hint, don't just buy 1 bag because they'll be gone before you know it. Get your 20% Spirit Gym discount on your Shilajit gummies. Go to Organifi.com/Chek20. That's Organifi, ORGANIFI.com/Chek20 to get your 20% discount on these amazing nutritious gummies.
I guess what I would like to ask is, in your conception, if we go to Plato's cave, for example, where the people that were prisoners in the cave thought the shadows on the wall were the actual reality.
Right. That's it. That's Prakriti and that's Brahman.
And so the fire would be, in this case, what's producing the broadcast?
No, the fire doesn't produce the broadcast.
Well, I mean, and that was the source of the
original-
shadows in the cave is what I'm talking about.
The original being's shadows are cast through the projector onto the screen. And if you think the screen is the reality and you run in it, you'll just bump your head. I have a metaphor for this. You're watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You really like it. It's so good, you forget it's a movie. You go running up to the screen, smash your head against it, fall down bleeding. Now, what happened? You were attracted to what? Krishna. Was Krishna personally present? No. Was chunks of Krishna present? Yes.
That's what I'm getting at, the chunks.
You're irresistible. You couldn't resist it because everything within Prakriti is chunks of Krishna.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That fits. That fits what I conceive.
That's the projector. And therefore, each of these amazing universes is just a whole series of clips that are running.
Mm-hmm.
We have an eclipse when all of these things that are broadcast and playing on the screen that we're hungry for, but we go boom, smack into the screen again, get a bloody nose because we thought it was over there. This is called yoga. Yoga is pointing yourself toward where it comes from, but it doesn't come from the light. It comes via the light. Got back to the lens of the projector. If you followed the light all the way back, put your head up against it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you'd be right at the boundary between Prakriti and Brahman. So if you say it's all coming from Brahman, that's true, partially. But if you say it's the same, then no, this is its image or shadow.
Right.
But its substance is there.
But it can't project anything but what it is.
Unless it's a person, in which case you can't say what it could project from what it's so far projected. You can't put a limit on what it might do. You can only say that it did do it. And that's where the achintya comes in. You can conceive of this up to a certain point, but then beyond that, it's unlimited. In other words, just because you can see it emerge into limited reality doesn't mean you understand its limitations where it exists originally. What if it doesn't have any? And that's the idea that is given to us via the Veda, that this is the projected image of the realm of what is inside of Brahman, beyond the glare of those lights, and projected onto the screen of Prakriti, what we've been attracted to. That attraction is back there, so to speak. It's not here. It's here, and if you keep going, it's there. And that's where Paramatma comes in. And that's where Krishna says, because you and I are becoming friends, I can explain myself to you. What I'm going to explain, he says, is achintya. It's inconceivable from where you've been, from what you've been experiencing. So you're going to have to develop another faculty to actually see me. So chapter 10, he explains himself. Chapter 11, he points himself out permeating the cosmos. And then, ultimately, how that is a reflection of Vaikuntha, and how Vaikuntha is the source of all of this in terms of imagery, but the exact behaviors here get twisted and perverted by expressing themselves within the laws of Prakriti, and hence how the material laws fit into it. And therefore, we become sattvic so that we have the least friction and least violence within Prakriti. And that violence is what's necessary if you're going to force the Prakriti to please you. So we pull back from that, and that's sattva. Now we're here. Now with sattva, we aim ourselves within via mantra, there, make the contact, because now this isn't disturbing us. And therefore, this is where the vibration of the Sanskrit language and the mantras becomes so crucial.
Well, that leads really beautifully into my next question. You've mentioned mantra. That's a practice for, raising one's vibration, purification, and all various other, achieving higher states of consciousness is how I would put it. I'm afraid to talk to you now because every time I say something, you tell me I'm wrong or I'm ignorant. So I'm worried about saying anything now.
No, I wasn't saying ignorant. I was saying that the English language gets in the way. I think you're really quite bright. The English language does get in the way, and that is the message that I'm a carrier for. So please don't take it personally.
No, I'm fine. I'm
Okay.
I grew up in a battlefield, so and I've been in a million debates in my life, and I actually love the debate process, and I have a deep connection to God that nobody can disturb, no matter what their belief is. What are some practices? We've mentioned mantra, which is what I was leading into. What are some practices anyone can use to enter into? I wrote a non-dual state because that was really what I wanted to kind of hash out. But really what I was trying to say with a non-dual state is more, I would say, union with that which is projecting, not the projection.
Yes.
If there is something, a few simple things you would suggest anyone could begin with. I love mantra. I did Diva Pramal and Meaton's course on mantra, which was beautiful. What are some other steps maybe you could suggest?
I knew by the questions that you sent me that we were going to have what I always consider the difficult conversation to have, and that both you and I knew we had trust that the person would be loving and respectful and hold the space for this to happen. And so you're doing a marvelous job, and I'm pleased to be here with you.
Well, I think these things are important because, as I told you in the very beginning, the number one cause of illness and disease in my patients is confusion about these very things. The difference is they have all sorts of other people around them telling them they're wrong when they actually have legitimate questions or experiences that suggest otherwise. In fact, I've interviewed a couple of Christian preachers who gave it all up and walked away from very successful churches because they could not deal with the inconsistencies in the Bible, and it hurt them inside to keep pumping that out there.
Yeah.
And so, these questions, I know you study Sanskrit. I know this is what you've devoted your life to. So I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to actually put some of this up on the table and hear your educated perspective. And I'm trying to make correlates to what I have experienced within myself, even though I'm not using the same words because I don't have that cultural imprint that you do. I'm not, although I did grow up in the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple, and I've studied a lot of Yogananda's teachings and got the greatest gifts of all from those monks, because they're so loving and completely different than anything I've ever ran into in a church. But
we share that in common, that I've associated with the many different groups that are teaching this in different ways. And instead of quarreling with them, I have deeply appreciated and loved their dedication and what they're doing. And instead of trying to focus on what they don't know, I have always praised them and been grateful for what they did know and benefited from it. And so to me, this is and you're embodying it very beautifully, the realization that the complexity of the Veda has put a lot of people off just because it's a big library. But if we could get past that and not be busy trying to make someone wrong, trying to change their vocabulary so that they too find satisfaction in talking about things that English makes it more difficult to talk about because those things haven't been spoken of in English. So we're all in the midst of this transition. And that's
it's not just English either, Jeffrey. It's every language.
Well, yes and no, but the yes first. And then next, because English is farther away from its original sources that were more perfect, the Latin being a good example.
Mm-hmm.
A few hundred years ago, a couple thousand Latin words were dumped into English. One of my favorites is, what do we call a specialist in the heart in medicine?
Cardiologist.
Cardiologist. And the word cardia is actually one of the Latin words that was brought into English. And it's from the original word hridaya. And hridaya is the Sanskrit for the heart. And the hridaya is Hari's seat. And Hari is the supreme being who removes all things that could harm you or hurt you. So Hari is in the Hridaya. A cardiologist doesn't know he's working for Hari. He may wish so, and many of them do, but at the best, he's lost track of Hridaya and Hari.
So is this where Hare Krishna comes from?
Hare is different than Hari, actually. But Hare Krishna is Radha and Krishna. But that's a step further into the intimacy, which makes it a little more difficult to talk about in the general sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Hari means the remover of all things that could poison us or harm us. And when Krishna says, I am in your heart, and he's not saying, and I'm your lover, or could be. He's saying, I am in your heart, and I am sitting there trying to help you be safe from all the things that could harm you. I'm talking to you. This is the voice we call our conscience. We're trying to hear that inner voice, which is known as Param Atma. Mm-hmm. It's the voice of Sri Bhagavan Hari, who's upon our Hridaya, on the couch of our heart. And in the Gita, Krishna says, I'm in the heart of all living beings, and from there I'm guiding their wanderings throughout the universe. So,
well, that what you just said right there is one of the reasons I asked the question above and quoted the verse, because you just said, I'm in the heart of all living beings. And here it says, all beings are standing within me, but I am not contained or encompassed within them. So this is the opposite of what you just said. That's why I was trying to get a clarification on how that's possible.
Absolutely. And I was leading us toward chapter 10 and then 11, because this is where, in chapter 10, the 4 core verses of the Gita are given. Chapter 10, verses 8, 9, 10, and 11. Krishna says, I'm the source of everything. From me the entire creation flows. Knowing this, the wise adore me with all their hearts. Their thoughts dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered unto me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss in enlightening one another and conversing about me. To those who are constantly devoted and adore me with purest love, I give the understanding by which they may come to me. Out of compassion for them, I, who am dwelling within their heart, destroy the darkness born of ignorance with the shining lamp of Vedic knowledge. And in chapter 11, Arjuna asks the big question. He says, okay, in that case, could you please show me how you personally enter into the entire universe?
And what's the answer?
The answer is what is known as the Virata Purusha. And it's a terrifying vision that is so frightening. Arjuna himself is terrified. And this is where chapter 11 begins. Arjuna says, out of kindness and affection for me, speaking to Krishna, you've just revealed the ultimate guya, or secret knowledge, concerning your nature as Adhyatmika, the supreme being and source of all that is. Because of your words, my moha, or delusion, has now been removed. O Kamalapatra Akshi, he says to Krishna, O lotus-eyed one, whose eyes are as beautiful as the petals of a blooming lotus, I have heard from you in detail about how the countless beings are manifest within matter, and then dissolved again and again. I've also learned that you are the greatest Atma, who pervades all and can never be destroyed. O Parama Ishvara, greatest among all controllers, since you have described your nature as the Atmana, ultimate Atma, and you are also Purusha Uttama, the greatest person who is beyond the reach of matter, I wish to see your Aishvara Rupa, magnificent universal form by which you pervade and support everything within the universe. O Prabhu, my beloved master, if you think I'm eligible to see this, O Yoga Ishvara, greatest of yogis, please show me how your imperishable self pervades the entire universe. Boom, 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 orchestra. The universe lights up. Arjuna has just asked the big one. And it's going to scare the daylights out of him. Okay, enough. Oh, I don't know what to do. I can't handle this. And he's a warrior. He's the toughest, one of the toughest guys on the field. They're still at the edge of the battlefield. And he's saying, show me this. And so Krishna says, okay, hold on. The rest of you wait a few minutes here. We'll come fight with you in a bit. We're going to look at the whole universe and see how I'm sustaining it. Oh.
Well, maybe we can get back to some practices you suggest that anyone can engage.
Even though we may read that chapter in the Gita, the secret here is, yes, and if you asked, could the Supreme Being be dangerous? The answer is, well, yes. What is he offering to Arjuna? Therefore to us, best friend. Really, best friend. Not danger, not scaring us with hell, not saying I'm going to hurt you if you don't do this. No. Instead, just saying, I'm there for you. I'm in your heart. Let's do this together. Let's be best friends.
So you're saying best friend is a practice?
As a practice. It's actually called a rasa. It's a flavor of the relationship. I would say that after talking to you for a couple of hours, I consider us very, very connected, and I feel a closeness and friendship with you that I now feel in every cell in my body.
Well, I like to get into this stuff. I wish we had more time because there's many things that I have not been able to satisfy myself with, but I don't want to turn the podcast into such a tennis match that nobody can follow it. So I think if we keep it to bite-sized chunks so we can let people kind of digest it, that's why I've kind of limited my responses in many situations. But I think it's been a fun dance for sure. And so you've got
best I've had in a long time.
So we've got mantra, we've got best friend. What else?
We've got tantra. We've got live it in the world. Import it into everything you do. Realize that the friendship that you're going to feel is an active, dynamic principle. It allows you to be the best friend of all living beings because you now actually have the compassion, the affection. You really care enough because your friendship with Bhagavan is going to give you that extra bit of ecstatic, caring, loving, concerned, being of service, not just taking, but giving. It's going to give you an unlimited supply of what to give, but not because you have it, but because you can show others how to have it. That is how to be best friends with Sri Bhagavan.
And that kind of lends itself to bhakti or devotional yoga, doesn't it? To love.
In many ways, I would even say yes. And the more time I spend with you, the more I love you. The more I feel your real being. Because neither you nor I are afraid of being our real self. That's the basis of our conversation.
Yeah.
That's the basis of yoga. That's the basis of this Vedic Vidya that we're so, I'd like to say, addicted to. but it's even better. Can't imagine living without. Can't even imagine it. We know what it felt like to be that empty. And I believe that the emptiness and oneness are great lessons, because at a certain point in both of them, you suddenly see beauty, but with new eyes. It's not what I can get. It's that it exists and is so beautiful. I want to meet the artist. I want to be closer. I want to be in the service of it. And you know what that feels like? When someone really touches you, the deep, loving, atmic responses, I wish I could find something to do for them that would give them as much joy as what they just gave to me. To me, this is what Krishna means when he says, because you're my friend, I'm going to show you who I really am. And in that who I really am, we softly, lovingly, carefully, pushy, violent, demanding, we become like Bhagavan by liking Bhagavan, but we don't pretend to be like the Almighty. It's the endlessly patient. I'll wait forever. I got forever given back to me. And I know this, I feel this, I see this in you, my friend.
Well, I've got no choice.
That's the fun part, isn't it?
Meaning, when I say that, I mean when you have an experience of God. I mean the words I can best use is unconditional love. And when you felt something that pure and that amazing and beautiful, everything else is secondary. And therefore, when I say I have no choice, I as a man who's a connoisseur of everything, whatever I get into, I go for the best. Once you've had that experience, then you kind of have no choice. It's like, I'll leave it right there.
I love what you said. I always say I could have become some kind of sewer, but instead I became a connoisseur.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jeffrey, I'd love it if you want to share websites, resources, where people can find you as we close here.
Well, thank you very much. And I haven't had this much fun in a long time.
Playing tennis with Paul.
Absolutely. Playing Bhagavan tennis with an infinite net.
Well, my goal was to really help people understand some of these things, because I know, there's two kinds of misunderstanding. One where you think you understand, but you realize you don't, and one where you simply don't. And, I don't have the time to spend the years of studying Sanskrit to get clear. So one of the challenges I face that everybody faces, I read a lot of books by scholars and people with the same kinds of credentials you have and more, but they say different things. There's not a uniformity among them. And that's the same in all religions and all subjects of study. Yeah. So, I'm coming to you now, but if I sat down and interviewed any number of the people in my library and said what you said, they might say I was wrong. Because I know you and I really love your book, I thought, well, let me get into this with Jeffrey and see what happens. And ultimately, I went on a journey and ended up right where I began, which is the best thing I can do is keep loving God, because that's the only thing I know that works every time.
Well, and wonderfully said. And when I'm in that mood, I then say, as soon as and you just got me back in that mood. A second later, I was thinking about something else, but you said it so beautifully, I came right back and said, yep, right there, that's it. Hari Haraya Namaha. I like singing my love. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusha Tama Aham Bhajami Govinda Adipurusha Tama Aham Bhajami Venu Kanvantam Aravinda Dalayataksham. And I could go on, but I don't
Well, we better get to websites and resources.
Because, as you know, and I know you practice daily, these beautiful mantras, these exquisite gifts that were given to us and that we can't imagine living without, that we could spend some time together sharing these in this way so that they become available to everyone.
Yeah, aho. Where can people find you, Jeffrey?
GitaComesAlive.com or JeffreyArmstrong.com.
Awesome. Well,
Wonderful time to spend this time with you.
yeah, thank you. And thank you to everybody that listened for joining us on this amazing, interesting journey. I'm sure that you found your mind and your heart and soul going in all sorts of different directions through this. And I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to really kind of look deep within ourselves. I think because the depth of this study is so deep, my suggestion to the listeners is just really use your heart to feel what you know. That's what works best for me. We don't all have the luxury of spending countless hours and years of studying, but the one thing we can do is use our heart to feel what we know. And I think, I don't think Jeffrey would disagree with that.
No.
And so thanks to my sponsors for all your love and support and your beautiful products. Thanks to all of you for anything you buy from the sponsors, because anything you buy from the sponsors goes into the hands of beautiful people that support small farmers, organic farmers, biodynamic farmers, free-range farmers, which means they're supporting you. And a little bit goes to the podcast to support the podcast. So that's a three-way win-win. And I'd love to see you all be as healthy as possible, which is why I have sponsors that give you things that help make you healthy every day. And I'm super excited to be back with you guys next week with something interesting and amazing to grow us all. And maybe I'll grow right there with you. I often do. I'll tell you that. And so, Jeffrey, I'll say once again, thank you. Aho.
Well, and I'm going to say I had the most beautiful day spending time with Mata Bhumi's favorite friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Paul Chek. So, my dear friend, we have Mata Bhumi in common and much more.
All right. Lots of love.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Jeffrey Armstrong, also known as Kavindra Rishi. Jeffrey is offering Paul's listeners 10% off his many online classes, such as 6 Steps to an Enlightened Lifestyle, The Path of Karma Yoga, or The Meaning of Taking Birth on Earth. Go to jeffreyarmstrong.com and click on Shop in the top menu to browse his extensive library of online courses and classes. Use the promo code CHEK-VIP on checkout to get your 10% discount. That's CHEK-VIP to get 10% off. Jeffrey also offers Ayurvedic astrology consultations where you can get a full life reading that includes all areas of life: relationship, family, health, career, dharma, spiritual tendencies, past, present, and future. Go to jeffreyarmstrong.com and click on Consulting in the top menu, then Ayurvedic Astrology. Make sure you check out Jeffrey's books, including his most recent work, Dreaming the Countless Worlds, which won the 2024 American Fiction Award for Poetry. They're available on his website and also on Amazon.com. Paul invites you to join his Spirit Gym program and community, where you can share ideas and ask questions about topics discussed in this podcast. There are 3 different levels of membership to fit your budget and lifestyle. You can participate in live Q&A sessions with podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community, where you can chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study the comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating and a warm review on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.